And when I take out xy from x squared y leaves me x, the y's would cancel, minus xy divided into the second term, xy squared would leave me y. So I have it completely factored. My parentheses factors no further. And so now I look what I can cancel. Everything in the numerator is being multiplied together, which means it's not stuck together. I'm going to use that word more often than mathematically speaking I should probably use, but they're not stuck together. In the denominator, I have three terms being multiplied. The x times the y times the x minus y. When there is a sign between two things or three things or four things, when there are signs there, those things are stuck together. It's a group, it's a quantity, and it always has to stay as a group or quantity. So in this problem, I can reduce or cancel my x with my x, that equals 1, which is why it cancels, and my y with my y, which is why it cancels. Do not mark it off and go 4xy, now it's 3xy. That's not what you're doing. X over x equals 1. They reduce or cancel. Y over y equals 1. So they reduce over cancel. Leaving me then with 4 over x minus y for my final answer. So our new step really is learning what we can or can't cancel. Okay, question 2, still all about the factoring. In my numerator, go through my rules of factoring. Is there a common factor? Yes, I can take out a 2. So 2 into 4x is 2x, plus 2 into 2 is 1. Over. And in my denominator, I have a trinomial. Is there a common factor? No. So I do my trial and error. Bless you again. 2x squared, 2x times 1x. My signs are plus, plus. 1 times 3 gives me 3. Check to see if you've got your 7. Outer times outer is 6. Inner times inner is 1. 6 and 1 is 7. I used that numerator to help me factor. Since there was a 2x plus 1 in my numerator, when I went to put in my 1 and my 3, I purposely put the 1 first and the 3 second, thinking that it's likely that they're going to be the same so that they'll cancel out. So you've got some helpers with your factoring there. Okay, so again, when I went to go put this 1 and 3, I purposely put the 1 here, knowing that it looks like this, because now those entire groups are going to cancel each other out. I can cancel or reduce an entire group with an entire group. Just never parts of a group. Leaving me with 2 over x plus 3. So again, you can see, it's really about factoring still. Okay, we're going to incorporate something different in this one. In my numerator, I have a trinomial, no common factor, so I go right to my trial and error. So I'm going to have 5x times x. Both signs are minuses. And 4 times 3. And make sure it works. Outer times outer, minus 15. Inner times inner is minus 4. Minus 15 and minus 4 is minus 19. In my denominator, do not rearrange the denominator. A couple people are rearranging things and you're missing signs this way. Don't rearrange this. So you're going to have a difference of squares, no common factor. So 3 times 3, x times x, one gets a plus, one gets a minus. Now, what we have here is two factors that almost look exactly alike, but they're not the same. You can't cancel them unless they're exactly the same. So we're going to do something to make them the same, and then I'm going to kind of show you a shortcut. Okay, so what's happening here is I'm going to take my 3 minus x, and I'm going to rearrange it to say negative x plus 3. So I rearrange it first. Then I'm going to take out a negative. And when I take out the negative, it makes the x positive and it makes the 3 negative. Okay, so first I just took this and rearranged it. Put the negative x first and the positive 3 second. Pulled out a negative, which makes this positive and then this negative. Still equivalent though. Now it allows me to cancel. So I've replaced my 3 minus x with negative times the quantity x minus 3. And now it allows me to cancel x minus 3 with x minus 3. Leaving me 5x minus 4 in the numerator, 3 plus x in the denominator, but it also leaves me this negative. I didn't cancel the negative, I only canceled the group x minus 3. So we've got to put a negative in our answer. It doesn't matter where you place the negative. You can put it in the numerator, you can put it in the denominator, or you can put it out front. But wherever you place it, if you put it in the top or the bottom, you've got to use parentheses. So I'm just going to do that. But it could be this. And actually, it could be one other thing. If you're really careful, it can go right out in front, where it doesn't really belong to the numerator or the denominator. And all 3 of those things are equivalent. Okay? So I canceled out these. After I change this format, I've got my negative left, so I either have to put it in the bottom, like since I have a group left, I need parentheses. I can put it in the top, but since I have a group, I need parentheses, or I can put it out in front. Okay? So all 3 varieties work. Okay, but be very careful if you do this, so it doesn't look like it's in the top or bottom, because if you didn't have parentheses, I would take it out, because that's a big deal. Okay? Those 2 things that I just canceled, x minus 3 and 3 minus x, those are called additive inverses. And when I have additive inverses, I don't normally do all this. I don't show all this stuff. I just cancel them and make my answer negative. So you don't have to show me the rearranging, the taking out the negative. You're going to see me do one later, and I'll do that. Or I'm just going to cancel my additive inverses and just make sure I take out a negative. Okay, some questions on that one? Some further questions? Okay, in my next one here, I'm going to go below it so I have more room. Okay, in my first numerator, you'll notice now that I have 2 fractions. So what happens? The problem just gets bigger, that's all. It just means more factoring. Okay? So like this was the question on a test. Now I have 4 places to look at. So our problems are just getting bigger, they're just growing. Okay? In my first numerator, there is no common factor. I have a trinomial that I'll use trial and error. So I have x times x and minus 4 and positive 3, opposite signs, gives me my negative 1 in the middle. First denominator, common factor of an x. Make sure you look for common factors as you did on your test. Hopefully you did on your test. Look for that common factor first. So x comes out of there, I'm left with x minus 5, which goes no further. Times, in the second fraction's numerator, I have a common factor of 3. And I'm left with x squared minus 25, which will factor further. I'm going to go ahead and do it right above there. That's a difference of squares. So not to confuse myself, I'm going to go ahead and scratch that out because I replaced it. And then in my denominator, I have x plus 3, which I can do nothing to. Okay, so let's look at what I did again. Trinomial here, trial and error. common factor on this one. This one I took out a common factor, but when I did that, I created a difference of squares, so I went ahead and factored that. Scratched this out, not to confuse myself, to think that it's left, because I replaced it, and then in my denominator I could do nothing. So now I just start canceling. I can cancel whole groups with whole groups. X minus 5 with x minus 5. X plus 3 with x plus 3. And I believe that's it. Leaving me in my numerator with a 3 and x minus 4 and an x plus 5. Those are groups which stay as groups. And in my denominator, just my plain x. It doesn't matter if you put that 3 first, but it looks better first instead of in the middle between the parentheses or at the end. I wouldn't mark it wrong though. Okay, question on that one? Evie. Evie, sorry.
Would you count it wrong if we FOILed out that?
You do not want to do that. Because eventually you use that form to do other things with it.
Okay.
We're not going to do it in here, but you will. Do I have no idea? Okay, on this next question. Do not make this question harder than it is. Please. Because people do it. And it's really simple. It's really simple. It's just a simple question, but people make it really hard because they want to multiply it and FOIL it, and then they end up with this really long thing, but it's not hard, okay? This involves absolutely no factoring. When you have this power of 2 on the outside, that means that you have 2 of the things on the inside. So it means 2 of the numerators, 2 of the denominators. And if I take 2 of the numerators, I'm simply going to write that as x plus 3 squared. And I shouldn't say maybe 2 of them. I have that squared. I shouldn't say 2 of them, but 2 of those groups, not added, multiplied. So don't take x plus 3 and FOIL it out and do all that. And then when I take my 5 to the second power, go ahead and calculate that. That's 25. Times, then I go to my second parentheses and I do the same thing. 4 to the 4th power, 4 times 4, 16, 64, 256, I think. So 4 to the 4th power, 256, and then x plus 3 to the 4th power, simply write as x plus 3 to the 4th power. Don't multiply anything out with those variables. And then I reduce. 256 and 25, if you go to your calculator and you try to reduce that, it's going to give you a decimal, and if you go to math fraction, it's going to give you the same fraction back because there's no common factor of those 2 numbers. So those numbers are not going to reduce. However, on my groups, x plus 3 squared means you have 2 of those groups multiplied together. X plus 3 to the 4th means you have 4 of those groups multiplied together. So without having to write all of that out, I can cancel these 2 with 2 of those, leaving me 2 of those. Making my final answer. $256 over 25 times x plus 3 squared. Are we good on how I just took 2 away from the 4, real simply? Some questions on that? Okay. Just 2 more questions.